Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is supervise. Let's take a moment to look at some of the definitions or the ways that we use this verb. The first two ways this verb gets used are very much connected. So, our first definition here is to observe and direct the execution of a task, a project, or an activity. Or you might be directing and observing someone or a group of people. Our second definition is to observe and direct the work of someone. So, when many people think of this verb supervise, they think of their workplace and they think of one coworker who might be telling another, you need to do A, B, and C, and kind of looking over their work, checking it, making sure it is okay. But this type of action of observing and directing another person, it doesn't just have to happen at work. It can happen in schools. It can happen at home. Maybe you have a project out in your yard. You're building something, right? There might be one person who's kind of, we might say, in charge, telling others what they're going to do or the process that we're going to follow to do something. So that is all connected to these first two definitions. A third way you might hear the verb supervise used is to mean to keep watch over someone in the interest of their safety and security or others' safety and security. So, with this third definition, my mind immediately goes to small children. And so, we might use this verb to describe one person who is in charge of watching a child in order to keep that child safe. You should know that the verb supervise is a regular verb. To form the progressive tense here, what you need to do is drop the E and then add ing to make supervising. The past tense and participle form of this verb can be made by just adding the letter D since this verb already ends in an E. Our base verb, supervise, ends in a voiced Z sound. This means that our ending is just going to make a D sound. So we're not going to add an extra syllable as we say it. It should sound like this: supervised, supervised. Okay. Now, there aren't any phrasal verbs that we need to study with supervise. So instead, we can focus our practice today on using our verb of the day in the simple present and the simple future with a focus on will. Let's start with the simple present. We use this verb tense to talk about our habits and our routines, certain actions that repeat at kind of a consistent interval. So maybe it's something you do every day, or something you do so many times a week, or so many times a month or a year. Right? That's that idea of an action that repeats again and again. Okay. We also use this verb tense to discuss facts, and we will use it with verbs that we call stative, so they're describing feelings and conditions, because we don't use those in the progressive. Okay. Now, I think the most complicated thing about the simple present is remembering that we need to pay attention to our subject. If our subject is I, you, we, or they, then I just use the base verb. Okay? No special endings, no special suffixes. But if my subject is he, she, or it, I'm going to add an S to the end of the verb. And you can see that in my example sentence. The mayor supervises the administration of all township agencies and represents the township before other governmental agencies. Okay, so here, mayor, we're generally talking about the leader of a city, the elected leader of a city. Here, mayor is one person, right? So you can see that S on the end of the verb, and I'm describing a fact, what that person's job duties are. Okay. Now, if I want to make a negative simple present sentence, my structure for this will be to start with my subject. And if that subject is I, you, we, or they, then I use do not and then the base verb. But if the subject is he, she, or it, I'm going to use does not and then the base verb. So notice I'm not adding an S in the negative. Okay? Let's look at an example sentence. On the screen it says, the central bank does not supervise cryptocurrency. Okay? So here we might be talking about a particular government's control or lack here of of cryptocurrency, right? There's no one directing, no one observing what's going on with it. It's just not part of their duties. Okay? Now let's look at making a yes or no question in the simple present. To do this, I start with do or does, whichever form matches our subject. That subject comes next. And then you use the base verb. So again, note, I'm not adding an S to the end of the verb here. I'm only doing that in the affirmative. Here's another example sentence. Do you supervise the children when they play outside? Okay, so maybe this is a question one parent is asking another parent because their children are going to play together at that second parent's house. And so the first parent just kind of wants to understand what's going to be going on. Is my child going to be safe? Okay. Now let's talk about the simple future. Today, we're going to focus on using will. Okay? Will is really common when we make promises, we make predictions, or we make an offer to do something. You might hear some people use it to discuss plans, but it's far less common. The nice thing about making sentences in the simple future with will is that our structure is going to stay the same. So no matter what my subject is, that subject will come first. I will use will, and then I use the base verb. Okay. You can see that in my first example here. These officers will supervise the prisoners. Okay. So this sentence is connecting back to our third definition, right? So here, maybe we're not concerned about the prisoner's safety, but other people's safety, and in case they were able to get to freedom or get themselves out of wherever this might be. So we could be talking about prisoners in war. We could be talking about people who are in prison as well. So not a lot of context there in that sentence. Let's talk about making a negative simple future sentence. Again, doesn't matter what our subject is, that's going to come first. Then we're going to have will, not, and then the base verb. You might also hear the contraction won't. That's W-O-N apostrophe T. Okay? I actually use that contraction in my example sentence here. Area school support staff won't supervise any extracurricular activities for the rest of the school year. Okay, so this might be part of an announcement, some kind of change in policy, but essentially they're not going to be responsible for keeping kids safe or observing them during those after school activities. Lastly, let's look at making a yes or no question in the simple future. To do this, I'm going to start with will, then I'll have my subject, and then the base verb. You can see that in will you supervise the new employees tomorrow? Right? Maybe I'm asking one of my coworkers, kind of like, promise me you'll do this, right? You'll undertake this directing and observing. Okay? Now, let's spend a little bit of time looking at some words that are related to our verb supervise. The first word we're going to discuss today is the noun supervision. This is the action of supervising someone or something. Okay? So this can connect back to all three definitions of the verb. We could be talking about an activity, we can be talking about someone at work, we could be talking about keeping someone safe. An example of this noun in a sentence might be, can you work with little supervision? So here, This might be a question you're asked during a job interview, right? Are you able to do certain tasks without somebody reminding you or telling you, first do this, then do that, then do that, and maybe watching and checking over things a lot. That might be what they're asking for. Some people really like that, others maybe it's not a great fit. Another related word you might hear is the noun supervisor. This is a person who supervises a person or an activity. Some related words you might hear are manager or boss, right? So here, many times we're specifically talking about someone who directs and observes your work. An example of this noun in a sentence might be, did you ask your supervisor for help? Another related word is supervisee. This is the person who is being supervised, right? So who is getting direction or is having their work checked by someone else. An example of this. What did the supervisee say about his management skills? So here maybe we've asked staff members to talk about the person who supervises them, how they're doing. Does this person communicate well? Do they offer you good feedback? Things along that nature. The last related word we're going to talk about today is the adjective supervisory. This is having or relating to the role of observing and directing an activity or a person. Okay? So here we're generally describing something, right? Because we've got an adjective. An example of this word might be in the sentence, the European Central Bank Supervisory Board held an emergency meeting last week, right? So this board, this group, is in charge of observing and directing banks in Europe, okay? So hopefully we can see how that adjective is describing the board's work. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you have a great day.